Welcome back to Magic Hour Podcast, my loves. Taylor Page here.
And I'm Claire. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
So, I don't know about you guys, but I have been going through this super intense, transformative, and I feel like these things kind of come out of nowhere. Like, you're like, da da da, just living your life. And then all of a sudden it's like, ah, like floored by this intense energy. And it kind of hit me like a train. And so, me being the astrologer that I am, I was like, what's happening to me right now? And I pulled up my chart and I've just been going through this time where grief is resurfacing and I'm feeling a little bit melancholy. And I can tell that there's a deeper layer of excavation that's coming up to be looked at. And I don't take that as a failure or a sign of me not being healed. I take it as an invitation to crack deeper open intuitively as well. And so I was sitting here with all of these emotions and messengers and things coming up. And so I looked at my birth chart and it turns out I'm in my Chiron square Chiron right now. So I know the age demographic of this podcast. A lot of people listening have Chiron in Cancer, like I do. My Chiron's at 27 and Chiron at time of recording is at 25 degrees of Aries right now. So as soon as it entered that 2-degree orb, getting closer and closer and closer to it being exact, I was like, activated in this deeper layer of healing. And so I was sitting here and I got this message that our ego is a really valuable messenger too, if we let it. Because underneath everything, all of the shady shit that our ego is trying to pull is a need that doesn't feel like it's being met. I was having this really great talk with Ari. He and I, it's so funny too. I've been just on this like astrological deep dive, and my progressed moon is in Pisces right now. And I've just been in the ocean way more than I've ever been, like around water. And we were sitting on this beach, and he was like, hey, because sometimes, I'm around his world a lot, which is not like the mystical world. And I'm around these businessmen with these accomplishments and they all like talk about it. And there's like a connotation of you have your little job and like your husband supports you. And that just grinds my gears. And so sometimes when I'm in those scenarios, I like feel the need to prove myself. It was very subconscious. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I would go into these places with these businessmen and they would be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, actually, my business is probably more successful than yours. But I wouldn't actually say that. But I would just be like, I have a waitlist and I have a podcast. And I would just be like telling them all of these things to try to make them understand what I did wasn't just a silly side job, which side note, even if it was a silly side job, F that. Like, this was a witch wound being triggered, and I was meeting the oppressor instead of soul family by listening to the witch wound. This need to like prove myself and qualify myself to fit into their world was completely ego based and wound driven. But it was in a very subconscious way until Ari pulled me aside and he's like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. I've noticed that this is coming up. And sometimes when we're meeting new people, it's like you feel the need to prove yourself to them. He's like, I don't think it's doing what you think it's doing. He's like, let me be the one to sing your praises and talk about everything you do. And he's like, and I do behind the scenes. Trust me, these guys all know I'm so proud of you. And he's like, but you being the one to do it, I just don't think it's doing what you think it's doing. And so I had to sit with that. And so much shame came up, so much. I was so embarrassed because sometimes when you act from like a subconscious egoic way, you look back and you're like, why the hell was I doing that? It's so embarrassing. And so I kind of just sat with that shame and I was like, he's so right. And I just felt the truth of what he was saying. And that's when I got this message of actually there's valuable information here. And the need that you feel wasn't met was being seen. You didn't feel seen and you felt misunderstood. And that felt deeply unnerving and dysregulating to you. So your ego came in to try to protect you and save the day. And so it made me sit in relationship to my ego as an intuitive teacher too. And I was like, our ego is such a valuable messenger. When we're acting from it, we can feel like that's not in resonance with who I really am to like be in that ego place. But when you get deeper down, it's like, what's that need inside that doesn't feel met. So the ego's like rolling up their sleeves, like, I'll take care of this.
Oh my God. First of all, I love Ari. Shout out to Ari.
I know.
What a beautiful way to hold you in that and help you through it. And like, what great awareness, too. I think it's funny, too. Like, I feel like part of the reason that comes up for you is because in those spaces, I feel like all those businessmen are also doing that. I feel like the world of business is all about, like, well, I have this and I have that. And look at my big thing. And I bought this house. And it's like everyone's so desperate to prove that they matter because they have success. And I think that's not really like an energy that is as feminine based, maybe, or just like an energy that you really get wrapped up in. Because I know your deeper truth around it is more about your offering than an accolade. But it's so easy to get swept up in that and then feel less than. So I just love that he had that awareness and was able to help you with it. And I love what you're saying too, because I think sometimes we get so trapped in our ego's tactics. It's like the ego isn't wrong. It just has the wrong tactics. It's like the inner villain, which is like a part of our ego. And I love how you'll talk about like, thank you. My inner villain is Mike Dexter from that one movie. I can't hardly wait. He's like the douchey frat bro who's mean to the main girl. And he's very mean to me in my mind. But, he's just sad and hurt. Anyway, but I can thank him for trying to protect me, but I don't need his tactics. And so he does have something to show to me that I'm maybe not valuing myself or that I'm needing validation from someone else or feeling like without their validation, I'm not valid. And that's been a huge thing that's been coming up for me of like, I can validate myself. I can affirm myself. And I don't need an outside person to do it for me to be valid. And that's been like a major shift that I've been trying to make.
That's so powerful. And to a certain extent, that's what was coming up with this for me too, is like spiritual entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship of any kind is a spiritual journey, point blank. But spiritual entrepreneurship is really interesting because it's not as known. Like it's a more isolated experience, maybe less so now, but especially when I started almost 10 years ago. My family members, some of them don't really know what I do. And they'll be like, did you like work today? The way they talk about my business, they'll just be like, hey, I need a ride to the airport on like a Wednesday at 12. I'm like, I have client sessions. Like the way they talk about my business or like my little podcast, none of them really listen to it. It's all been festering in this space where I'm like, I don't feel seen or understood. Like this community is so amazing because I feel super seen and understood. And I pour my heart and my soul and my lifeblood into this podcast and business, which is why it was also my ego is like flaring to protect me because I care so much about the offerings. Like you were saying, I put so much into my business, which really only Ari sees because we obviously are married and he sees behind the scenes and really you see too. I think that that can be really interesting. That pattern of like, I see my mind, body, soul, and either what I have to offer or what I'm pouring in or what I have to give. And you're not seeing it. And I think that just goes back to that core lesson of the healing the witch wound that I talk about, which is like when we listen to our witch wound, we attract our oppressor. And when we heal our witch wound, we attract our soul family. And it's like, I don't have to like beg or chase or convince anybody. I think just being in my power, and if people are interested and want to talk to me about it, I'll explain it to them. But it was like almost this freeing feeling. Like I felt so free since that conversation with Ari because like I was saying, so much of this was subconscious. And I think the entrepreneurship journey is one that really gets down to the nitty gritty because it's a really like vulnerable experience being an entrepreneur, in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, it's just been like a really powerful Chiron square Chiron moment for me.
Oh my God, that's a great overheard in LA.
My life is overheard in LA, literally.
But yeah, I mean, and one thing you said about when you're in the throes of the witch wound, you attract your oppressor. And I think that goes exactly back to what you were saying about our ego has lessons for us. Because I think initially when I heard you say that, I was like, oh, because I'm doing something wrong. So I'm just going to keep attracting my oppressor. But actually, the oppressor is this opportunity. And so you in those spaces was this opportunity to confront this deeper wound that was still festering and really embrace, like, oh, I don't have anything to prove because I know what I'm doing is really valuable, whether these people get it or not. And I don't have to prove it to them. I know it and they can think what they want about it, but I feel good and confident and lit up about what I'm doing. And that's enough. That's the opportunity of the oppressor. It's not just showing up to punish you, it's showing up to help you grow.
1,000,000%. And with that said, I feel like a way to reword it could be when you are in the throes of the witch wound, you attract your teacher. I think that that is exactly what you're saying, because the oppression is a definite part of what happened historically with the witch hunts. But maybe in this modern context, it's helpful because nothing about these messages are meant to like place blame back on us. Ideas for us to get curious about. And so I'm glad you said that, Claire. And I think that is a perfect way to reframe it. Like, okay, I attracted another teacher, whether it's a job or relationship, a living situation. It's like a gift that it keeps coming up. It's like, hey, I'm a teacher and I'm holding the key to your shackles. Are you ready to take it? Are you ready to free yourself? And it's like on that beach with Ari, I was like, yes, I am. And I feel so much lighter and more free since that.
I love that. And it's like what you said too, like when we face it again, I don't think it's like, oh, I haven't learned this lesson. It's a deeper layer of the lesson. And because you healed one part of it, you're able to face this part of it. It's like that spiral energy of not like, oh, I'm facing the same lesson again. It's like, no, I'm facing a new facet of it because I'm strong enough and aware enough of it to face this new piece of it and unshackle a new piece of it.
Yes, become even more free. All of these teachers are invitations to become even more free. And that is so powerful. You wouldn't give a second grader eighth grader's homework. You wouldn't give an eighth grader's homework a freshman in college's homework. I think that that speaks to that spiral nature too. It's like we're in a more advanced place, whereas before that teacher, that lesson, that test was probably there, but we weren't even registering it to the same degree that we can with our current consciousness.
Yes, absolutely.
So powerful. Speaking of healing and spiritual journeys, I'm so excited to get into the conversation this week with our coven member, Annelise. Annelise Cherie is a mindset coach and integrative energy practitioner who has spent over a decade guiding clients through emotional healing, mental clarity, and spiritual reconnection. Her approach weaves together nervous system work, intuitive development, and practices passed down from indigenous healers in Peru and Hawaii. With certifications in energy work, meditation, and mental health coaching, Annelise helps clients release old patterns and step into more aligned, conscious lives. Her passion lies in making deep healing not just transformative, but practical and fully integrated into everyday life. Annelise, I'm so excited to have you on Magic Hour today. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I love this show, so I'm super honored.
Yes. And for those of you that don't know, Annalise is also a dear friend of mine. She's in my coven, and she's the only Reiki practitioner that I've ever gone to. It's so ironic because you would think that I wouldn't be a skeptic, but I feel like I don't know what it is. I think it's the nature of how quickly people call themselves Reiki masters that just turned me off to the whole thing. I was like, I don't know what's going on, but you showed me how real energy work really is. And so I'm really grateful for you in my life.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's been amazing to hold space for you when you were needing it and to also show you and educate you a bit more on what energy work really is and how it can be used in integrity is the first thing to say, and as a way to really manage your stress and also balance your central nervous system, how it works with your mental health and everything else in between.
Absolutely. So we always start the podcast by asking our guests, what is your big three?
Okay, so my big three, I'm a Virgo sun, I'm a 29-degree Scorpio moon, and a Aquarius rising.
Yes. And I so see the Aquarius rising with you too. Not that I don't see the Virgo sun and the Scorpio moon. I mean, I know you well enough to really see your astrology, but that Aquarius free spirit, forging your own authentic path in this life, bringing the intuition and the wisdom to the world, I just see that so much.
That has been my life from day one.
Yes, it's like Aquarius placements to me embody that quote of you're not meant to fit into this world, you're meant to create a better one. So I love that.
That's definitely how it's been.
Yes. And so the second question, which I know you'll probably have many possible answers for this, so just go with whatever pulls you, but how does your intuition speak to you?
Ooh, that's such a good question. As you said, it can happen in so many different ways. For me, I'm a very visual learner. I always have been. I'm very much a creative mind. So when I first started tapping into my energy, into my intuition, it was almost like a movie playing in my mind, just these prolific images. And most of the time, they weren't necessarily like direct and literal, but metaphorical imagery that was representing certain emotions or feelings or symbols or things of that nature. So definitely visual is how I tap into it. Over the years, I would also say just a knowing, like kinesthetic, because I could just be totally in my day, blowing around, blowing through, busy, busy. And then I'll just get hit with something and I'll just feel this moment of pause and this download come in. And that can happen on a physical level, on just a knowing level, or a visual level. One thing that also has really developed over time is auditory. And so now it's like I have a direct communication with my intuition as well as if I'm talking to energy or spirits or whatever directly as though I'm talking to you. It's that clear now. So I kind of have like a full spectrum of access points into it.
Yes. And what you're describing is the spiritual intuitive development path. Like we start with one or two clairs that are really strong. And then as we devote ourselves to this path and sit in this space, as you and I have been in this professionally for a similar amount of time, like the better part of a decade, it starts to open up all of our clairs to varying degrees. And clairaudience is my last one to come online. And I'm like, I just think clairaudience is the most direct, helpful one. And I think that there's almost a beauty in it coming last because the other ones have varying degrees of trust that are required. Whereas clairaudience, you just literally get the answer.
That is so real because the very first Reiki session I ever did, it was facilitated. My mentor who certified me was there watching the process to make sure everything was right. And the second I placed my hands on this individual, it was just immediate. Like these images started coming in. And the first one was this ballerina dancing on this thin mirror. And it was pitch black all around her and the mirror was cracking below her. And obviously that's not a literal message, right? Like you're a ballerina dancing on a mirror. It was a visual representation of how I experienced forms of control or over self-management, but knowing that you can't keep doing it this way and that the ground is falling out beneath you. And to me, the ballerina symbolized just over perfectionism and all of this stuff. And so being able to translate the imagery was really important because without the auditory component to it, I was just so nervous to tell this client what I had seen. I was like, she's going to think I'm crazy. But luckily it landed. And over time, as you said, the auditory development really just makes things so much more grounded. I think that's the best way. Like you said, you're able to trust it so much better because you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I know what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even if clairaudience is your first clair, there's still a journey of trusting giving what you're getting. So that's going to come through in a unique way for everyone. But I just want to point out the metaphorical nature of the imagery as it came in, because that to me says you are working with angels or different energetic beings that weren't human. Because, like, when past loved ones come through, and this is something I had to work through and understand as I've switched languages from angelic intuitive connection to mediumship, angels speak exactly the way that you were just describing. Like, through these images that are symbolic, that give information about your current energetic circumstances. And it's because they've never had to distill their consciousness down into a human form. So that metaphorical language more matches their energetic vibration. Whereas in mediumship, they've been human. So they're like, I was a ballerina and I feel comfortable sharing that with you. So for those of you that are out there listening and on your own intuitive development journey, that's a way that you can distinguish which type of guides you're working with because past loved ones are not metaphorical, they're literal because they've been on this plane before and can speak in that way.
That's so powerful. It makes so much sense because how I was taught energy work, both channeling, was in so many different lineages, first of all, and in so many different ways, which I'm so grateful to, because what I was always taught was like, we can create separation or refinement on what we're channeling or what we're tapping into, meaning you can be a specialist in the regard of, like a knee doctor who specializes in surgery on the knee, or you can be a specialist like an angel reader who has a direct communication with angelic energy. But the way that I was taught was sort of all inclusive. It all is connected to the same source of energy. So why just channel the knee metaphorically if you can channel the whole body? And that has a lot to do with how you connect, what you call in, the intentions that you put in place when you're working with an individual. And for me, it's sort of calling upon your entire higher council that is of the light and of the highest vibration. So that is inclusive of angelic energy. Sometimes loved ones will come into the space, even though I don't consider myself a medium. I've never actually been formally trained in it, but it's just anything that is there to serve your highest good and humanity's highest good is welcome into the space to help us grow. So it is cool as a practitioner. I love what you just said, because there really is a difference in communication between someone that was in a human incarnation or something that is not of this world, but part of it.
I love that. And I think even the energy, because I know that you work with plant medicine a lot, and there's something that feels even mother like, or a way that we're held by like nature spirits that's even different than angelic light. It's just really interesting, the energetic signature. It's like there's a parallel between our clairs unfolding and the types of energetic beings that we connect with, and how we can understand these like different facets of the diamond.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's everything and nothing, right? It's an endless well. Everybody is both a student and a teacher. I don't think there's ever like an arrival point of having all the answers. There's always more to learn and always more to discover. And it's such a multifaceted space. And so that's really cool.
I think, what you're doing is mediumship already. Like, we are a medium to different energetic beings that give messages to our clients. So we already are mediums. I think that it's just different facets of developing our evidential mediumship with past loved ones, or branching off into different specialties, like you were saying before. But I think what we're doing is already mediumship. So I just wanted to point that out.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it's something I definitely sit with. And I think you're right about that. Also, I feel like the way that I've been trained has so much to do with neuroscience and quantum physics and like the electromagnetic currents of our body and this singular source of energy that we're all part of and connected to, that is that big inclusive thing. So it's really just magical when you start to think about it.
It's so magical. And so let's get a little bit into your story of how you developed in these gifts and your pathway to becoming the channel that you are now.
So I had a pretty traumatic childhood. There was a lot of trauma, which I'll share for another time, the full details of that. And it got so bad that it was sort of just became a suppression where I just pushed it down really deep. And with that, also a suppression of my intuition, everything else, because I had to just turn it all off. I couldn't have access to any of it. And when I got into like my late teens, early 20s, it started to kind of surface. And I just was seeking out different types of support, different types of help, and conventional therapy, although offered some help, really wasn't getting me where I needed to be. It was very cyclical. So I'd heard about this spiritual detox center in Iquitos, Peru, that was the full detox, plant medicine, spiritual connection, spiritual development, like everything in between. I went down there as kind of like a final ditch effort, and that trip, and this was back in 2016, literally changed my entire life, largely in part working with the Shipibo lineage, the Shipibo tribes, participating in their ancient ceremonial practices, but also just being reconnected to nature, time in isolation to learn different processes, changed everything. And I remember when I first was introduced to energy work was down there, and it was my first ceremony working with a plant. And the shaman was like, do I have permission to clear something in your solar plexus, your stomach? And I was like, sure, like I just am freaking out, like do anything, you know? So he opened up this energy and started giving me energy to help me move this fear that I was holding in my stomach. And because of the altered state I was in, I actually physically and visually saw it taking place. And I was like, what is going on? This person's literally taking something out of me. And as he's doing that, I'm having a genuine nervous system response to the gestures that he's doing. And in that same experience, the other thing was like this disillusionment of time being linear and there being multiple realities and so on and so forth happening at once. And one of the biggest things, and I would say this is probably the biggest influence of what began me down this path, was I was raised by my aunt, my grandma, and my mom. And when I was on this trip, in one of my ceremonies, the medicine was like, we need to talk to you about your future, like what's coming down the line. And she went on to say, your aunt's going to get very sick. She's going to get cancer here soon. And when that happens, she's going to pass away very quickly. And your grandma isn't going to choose to go be with her in the spirit world just shortly after. Then the medicine was like, and when that happens, like your whole world's going to blow up and you're going to figure out why you're here. And, you know, of course, when I left the jungle, I got home and I, told my mom and my sisters, and I was like, I really hope this was a metaphor, whatever. But it ended up happening 2 months later. And to me, that's what I call a convincer, where something is so profound, where like the untangible or the unseen begins to take place in this physical reality. And I just became, I always joke and say, Indiana Jones of the mind. I was like, what is reality? Like, how is that possible? There's so much more than what we've been taught. If, you could see down the path that clearly, then what is actually true, like nothing that we've been taught. And that just began this deep excavation and education and research and studying into energy work, mindset, how the mind and body are connected, how we're all connected. And then it has just been a 12-year journey, and professionally 10 years.
It's really interesting because 2016 was like when I was starting. I just went through a really bad breakup and I was reading all these witchy books and really diving deep into astrology. So 2016 is like a thematic year that so many guests say. The 2016, 2017 era really activated a whole generation of practitioners.
Yeah, it was like some great awakening took place. And it was right before that curve, because I personally feel like the next really big awakening was around 2020, when this physical reality was greatly impacted, and it forced people to either disconnect more or really look for deeper meaning. And it almost feels like that 2016 grouping of individuals that like woke up and really started feeling the call within them ended up becoming the support and the thought leaders for those that came in the next grouping. So it's really amazing to see it. I mean, to experience it.
Yeah, and what a powerful story that was. I had full chills. I love your terminology of convincers, like something that was so profound on the spiritual level that then manifests in the physical level that just completely shifted what's possible for reality.
Instantly. I mean, one of the psychologists I've trained under, he always says this thing and I love it. He was like, if trauma can happen in an instant, then so can healing, believe it or not. And he was like, so can an awakening. And all that is a shift in perspective. If something happens that convinces you enough to change your belief around it, you've just changed your entire energetic imprint. You've just changed your entire model of reality that quickly. So change does happen that quickly.
Yeah. And once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. Once that instant of healing happens, you'll no longer accept the treatment you previously accepted. You'll no longer co create with the patterns that you used to co create with. You can't go back. And I think that that's so powerful. It's like such a initiation. It also really stood out to me about how that message that you got was about physical death for your grandma and your aunt. It's also very significant how 3 women raised you. I feel like 3 is such a holy, sacred number. And it's just such a powerful story. But but with your 29-degree Scorpio moon, I'm a 26-degree Scorpio sun. So we're in the later degrees of Scorpio. Like our sun and our moon are literally conjunct. My sun, your moon. And I feel like one of the gifts, even though it sometimes doesn't feel like a gift of the Scorpio late degree placements, is knowing when people are going to die. And it can be, I had experiences in my childhood where I also called out relatives that I had dreams that were going to pass and things like that. And it can be a really heavy, deep thing. Like when you got that message, how did you reconcile that? How did you sit with that?
I mean, it was like the stages of grief. At first, I was bartering and like, what can I do? How can I change this? And the plant was like, you can't. And, then I went into just deep levels of grief, which then went to deep levels of acceptance. But the beautiful thing was like after she shared that with me, she actually took me through the process of death. And I distinctly remember the plant kind of explaining to me as it pertains to this question, like, death isn't a mystery to us. We've done it so many times, and it's not something that we're not supposed to know. It's so I can show you. That was her, like, I can show you what it is because you've done it. Like, this isn't a secret to you as a species. And really all it is just this process of letting go and this process of surrender and accepting, and also leveling up at the same time with something else. Like, oh, death is a celebration. It's this beautiful thing of growth, of expansion, of initiation into a new set of learnings. And that just kind of gave birth to acceptance on such a beautiful level and allowed love into the space instead of fear. And so it was really hard initially. And then I went through the journey. And what's crazy about this is my grandma was so afraid to die. Like, she was terrified of it. And when Linda passed, she knew. It was crazy. She just knew because, I mean, we all kind of knew. But the day that she passed away, I had a client outside my office and they were literally like buzzing my gate, and she started FaceTiming me. And I knew, I was like, yeah, I have to take this, even though my client's here. And I answered it. And to kind of go back to like knowing when someone's going to die, she was like, can you just be with me for a moment, Annelise? And I was like, of course, absolutely. And then she looked at me and I just knew. Because the one thing that plants helped me understand, and what I've come to understand, was that death is a frequency and that it's a feeling. Like, you'll always know when it's there, and for need not be afraid. Like, you'll always know because it's a feeling. And if that feeling isn't there, like, you're good. And so she FaceTimed me and I felt it. And I was like, oh my gosh, death is here with us. This energy is here. And she had an aneurysm burst and she literally passed away on the phone with me, like in that moment. But I had remembered what the plant had shared with me to hold space for her. And it was like she instinctively knew, I need to call Annelise so she can help usher me across with peace. And I knew the assignment and I was like, okay, this is okay. Like, just feel how much love is going on. Like, I'm so excited for you. Like, this is a good thing. Don't be afraid. And then she just passed away. It was like truly one of the craziest moments of my life.
That is so powerful on so many levels. And death is a friend. I had a sitting with spirit earlier on in season 1, which is like making friends with the Grim Reaper. My mediumship journey has really taken me to a deep place with understanding that like death actually doesn't exist. It's just physical death. Our body is dying, but our soul can never die. We're going into the next plane of existence. And proof of that and evidence of that comes through time and time again. And I always quote my aunt, Reverend Carol Lotz, and I'm just going to tell a brief story. Something she said at my mom's funeral that really helped me understand physical death was these twins in a womb. And they're like, oh my gosh, we are so comfortable in this womb. We get all of our needs met in this womb. Like, how scary would it be to leave this womb? And they don't know life is on the other side and the world is on the other side. But we get so comfortable in these little slices of consciousness. Like, our body is a small slice of consciousness. That's all that we can really connect to from this place, which is similar to how babies feel in the womb. But then little do we know we're about to be birthed into something something with even more energetic potential. So that story was always really comforting to me.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And it's so freeing when you recognize, because you hear it all the time, like just surrender, just surrender, But when you truly start to understand, it's just acceptance and you need not be afraid. This is part of the agreement of life and it's perfect and there's nothing to fear. And there really isn't. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Leave it to us Scorpio placements to immediately go here in our conversation. But I want to go into channeling a little bit more. I want to talk about how you define a channel and your process.
Yeah. So, as I had mentioned earlier, the way that I was taught, so the foundation of it was needing to learn a form of energy work as a means to start to understand energetic language. And for me, it was Reiki was the foundation that I chose, but there are obviously a lot of different paths that you can learn. So the foundation of it is learning energy work. So you can understand the energy centers within the body. So you can start to familiarize with those different frequencies, honestly, the different brains that exist within our system. That's not just our actual, head, if you will, or our mind. And through that energetic process, it's for me personally, as I said, it's like tapping into universal consciousness, not just a singular frequency. So the way that I was taught was everything is connected to a singular source of energy, both light and darkness. Like it's all intertwined. And you set the stage with that intentionality of I am channeling the whole, like I am channeling everything. And I only allow into the space that which is of service to the highest good of the individual. And in that process, there's a lot of nuances and layers to this, right? When I very first began, I sort of was really taken away by the magic and the mysticism of it. And I still am, but was just blown away about how opening up with an energy source when I'm sitting down with a client, and that can be hands-on or it can be remote as well. Very similar to the work that you do in the regard of like, if you sit down with somebody, no matter the proximity or distance, like you can tap into their energetic field, you can tap into their neurology. And if they're giving you permission, sort of have access to the library of their life, both what is behind them, ahead of them, and currently within them, above them and below them, if you will. And so in that process, the refinement over a decade of doing it was I really got curious about the mental health component. It's like, how can we use the ability of channeling and energy work to help somebody really get grounded in their body and cultivate a healthier mind body connection, but also open up to a bigger belief system. And that just kind of led me down the path of studying neuroscience and the electromagnetic field that is around us and how you can tap into that neurology and that frequency and those emotions that we emote outwards. And so now at this point, when I work with a client, basically what it looks like is we first get somebody to feel safe. So that's bringing them into a very calm space. We do that with energy work. So energy work really helps with the central nervous system. It's a stress management tool. It helps somebody decompress. It helps somebody connect to their higher self, whether they're conscious or in a state of believability or not is irrelevant. When you're in that container, you're bringing somebody into deeper connection, deeper truth, deeper relaxation, where they feel more safe and at ease to really look at themselves. And when they disarm, all of the sudden, it's like their mental state expands and their unconscious mind expands. And at this point, you're able to really tap in to the unconscious aspects of somebody, their behavior, their emotional states, their choices, everything that they're doing. The big why around this or how around this is because, I am of the mind and in no way pushing a belief system that we are all part of and connected to a singular source of energy, and how you want to determine or define that's totally fine. But because of that, with permission, everything's available. You can access everything, and you just, as a practitioner, become a mirror to an individual. But at the end of the day, it's them. They're sharing with you from their higher self, from that energetic connection, what they are struggling to bring to the conscious awareness, if you will. That's kind of the best way to explain it. So it's getting somebody into a really calm state using energy work. And once we've got them in a really calm state, that's where we get more into the mental health coaching and the channeling, where it's like, okay, let's really talk through this. What are your questions? What's going on? And how can we really build a strategy for you to maintain what we're doing here today?
That was a great description, and it fits the work that I do too, like getting that connection, opening up to their energy. I just love the way that you described that. That was really succinct. And I just wanted to comment too on how you're talking about the electromagnetic field around us. Some people call it the aura. That is like when we are connecting with spiritual beings on the other side, that's what they're blending with, not our physical body. And I think that people, because of the narrative of possession, get that confused. So I wanted to take a time, like even when you're in trance mediumship or channeling, energetic being is never entering your physical body. Only our soul is in our physical body. It's our electromagnetic field is merging to a deep degree with their essence, and then we speak through them. So I just wanted to clear that up because some people get really scared about these kind of things.
Totally. And there's also science behind this too, and what I came to learn was just the saying of like, where focus goes, energy flows. And it's not that you're inviting something into your body, as you just said. You're just allowing yourself a moment to connect to something. It's like sitting down and watching a movie or listening to a song. You're just having an experience and a moment with whatever is in front of you. It's not like you're putting the movie into you, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Okay, so let's fast forward in the process to when the client is open and you're blended with their energy. And I want to really focus on the channeling element of that. So, what does that look like for you? Are you connecting with their spirit guides? What information are you channeling through, or what does that look like?
Channeling is so, one of the important factors of it is intention. So it's like going into it, and what is the purpose of going into that space really determines what you're tapping into or what you're accessing. And so for me specifically, I'm very focused on mental emotional regulation. And as I mentioned, helping build strategy. So when I'm in that channel with a client, I'm really calling in what I refer to as their higher counsel. It's like everything that is of the light and of the highest vibration that is in service to this individual, anything that needs to come in for them to have a moment of clarity, direction, or understanding, allow it to be sort of situation. And how that comes through is, as I was mentioning earlier, like it's visual and auditory. And so I literally will start to hear whether that's from like a being that's not of this earth, or if it's an ancestor, which has definitely happened, like a family member or something of that nature. There's just a flood of information, and it's sometimes so much information that I am just like, okay, I'm going to start the recorder. And as I start sharing with you everything that's coming up, if this brings up things or you have questions, please interject, because it's quite a lot of insights and information. And so to simply put it, I'm just connecting to somebody's higher self and their higher counsel, the energy that is there in service to them, that is supporting them, that is guiding them.
Yes, that's so well put. I so understand what you're saying about that kind of like flood of information. And that's why I actually ask my clients not to speak until I'm through that, because there's so much to say and I don't want to forget a single thing. And then we can talk about it and ask questions after and get deeper into it. So, like with that process of channeling, do you feel more of an urgency? Does your voice change when you're in that state of flow and the channel is open and the intention is set? How do you feel in that moment?
To me, it's just, I think one of the best ways to answer that, and there's been an evolution, as I'm sure you've experienced, the more you do it, the more grounded, natural, effortless it becomes. You also learn, I just want to make a side note of this before I get back to what I was saying, a lot of what comes into the space is also often dependent on the individual's willingness, how much they're willing to receive and how much they're willing to move forward. And so that's a big part of it too. But to connect to that, I began to realize a long time ago, as I started channeling, that truth is not subjective. It's a frequency, it's a feeling. And you can always, with practice in time, you start to understand the discernment and almost like the subtle energy body, the feeling of what is true and what is not, or what is just not necessary, you know? And that to me is what I stand by. And that's where there's groundedness and foundation. It's like, I know what truth feels like, and I know what truth doesn't feel like. And so when I'm with a client, I am just so sure about what is true in that moment of what's coming in and what they really need to hear in that moment. So I think for me, it's like just this sense of love, this sense of truth, and this sense of groundedness.
I love that. And I always say truth is simple and fear is complicated. And I think truth, like fear likes to make all of these like elaborate stories that it makes problems, not solutions. And the truth just cuts through all of it like a hot knife through butter. Like it just cuts through all of the fear because truth is so simple and you just recognize it as a soul knowing when it comes through. But something, it's funny that this is coming up because just yesterday I was in the kitchen and I had this like fearful thought pop into my head. And it made me realize, you know, when you can be the observer of it instead of the believer in it, that to me, fearful messages that come through have a slight energetic feeling or connotation of what if. Whereas truth is more just like simple, present, regulating, solution oriented. And fear is like, what if? And then we can say, like, oh, what if, what if? Even the messages that you and I have gotten about different relatives that we're going to pass, it wasn't, what if? And then this could happen, and then that, and then this. It was just like, hey, this is what's going to happen. And this is how you can show up to be of service. And it was grounded, solution oriented, and calm. And that doesn't mean that sometimes the truth takes some processing or that truth is always easy to hear. Just like you said, when you're a decade in to this work, you can so sense the context of what if versus this is a way that we're going to move forward. This is what needs to be heard now.
Yeah, it's so beautiful when you get into relationship with intuition and instinct in that way. And the thing I want to mention, and I always tell my clients this, is like we all have this ability, and we've forgotten, that everybody can remember, everybody can be that connected to a level of acceptance and surrender. And you said something too, where it's like acceptance can coexist with grief. It's like you can have truth in the space and the truth be hard, and those things can coexist together. So it's not just a matter of like, by accepting truth or being in the frequency of truth, does that automatically give you a state of peace and happiness and joy? Like truth is, gosh, it's a destroyer of worlds as it is a bringer of life. It's so powerful, and it's the roadmap to everything. I always say your truth is your roadmap. The more manipulations or dishonesty or like subtext that you bring to anything, the more detours you're going to have, because the truth always floats back to the surface, so.
And I think ultimately love thrives with truth, fear withers with truth.
Oh, that's so good. Very true.
You know, it's like it might be difficult to detangle the threads that got us to our current reality, but by following the truth, it will always be the road that takes us back to love.
Always, 100%. And yeah, I mean, that brings up like a whole nother wormhole of thought I would love to get into, but yeah, so for the purposes of time.
I know. I mean, if there's something you feel called to share, please do.
Well, okay, yeah. All right. So what I was going to say was it kind of brought to mind how throughout history, from the beginning of time, we create separation through belief system. But really, when you study it and are courageous enough or brave enough or willing enough to step out of like a singular lineage or a singular belief system, you start to very clearly see the through line that exists within all belief systems. And I grew up doing musical theater, and there was one thing that just stood out to me so much now as the practitioner that I am, which was how theater began. And it was with pageant wagons, and pageant wagons would actually be these like traveling, plays, if you will, that would educate people in the villages on religion, because that was how they were able to get the message across, if you will. And then that, of course, over time grew into theater. But now, all these years later, with all of the learnings and practice and experience and education, it's just incredible to me how we're at a point right now in history, maybe the first time ever, or at least maybe our earlier ancestors, intelligent cultures have this understanding, but we, for the first time, in my understanding, can really conceptualize energy without giving it a person, without giving it a name. We have the ability to comprehend just frequency and emotion as a conscious living thing without it needing a mask. And that is very unique. And I remember I was staying at a monastery in the Mojave Desert, and this monk, Yamunsanin, and I were chatting, and he had said to me, he's like, not a lot of monks will admit this. And he's like, but in our studies as monks, it is prophesized that there will come a time where the way in which we have taught this will come to an end and it will no longer be relevant, and that humanity will evolve to such a level that we'll need to find a new way to express what's true. And to me, it's just incredible how we're in this new age right now where we can actually comprehend the universe. We can comprehend energy. We can comprehend things that we never have. And because of that, I think this awakening or this understanding that's going on is so on point.
Yes, this is so powerful. And it goes back to something we said earlier that once you wake up or once you have that healing instant, you can't go back to sleep. And I think the evolution of spiritual consciousness is so huge. And sometimes it takes retrospect to realize how far we come. So I love that story. And as a former theater major myself, we have so many connections. It's so funny. But yeah, it's like there was always a character that was like the king slash god, and they would always come in at the end. Like that's where the deus ex machina mechanism comes in, and they always save the day. I really love what you said about us being able to perceive consciousness without anthropomorphizing it. And I think that that is like so key because we do it with God, which inevitably makes us gender the divine, which has led to a whole domino effect of pain on planet Earth. We do it with angels, we do it with fairies, we do it with everything. We do it with spirit people, and we turn them into these like vengeful ghosts that we can only understand through our limited understanding of consciousness. And I always say, like, if that was the case, then people who have done atrocious things on earth, wouldn't they have been attacked by them by now if that was possible? But anyway, there's no evidence of demons or anything like that in my humble opinion. That being said, I think that we are moving away from a medieval spiritual consciousness. And I'm so passionate about this because we've evolved with medicine, we've evolved with agriculture, we've evolved with all of these things. Not to say that ancient wisdom couldn't come in and fix some problems we have within our systems. That's a whole other conversation. But just overall, we're evolving in these different ways. But for some reason, spirituality still has this like medieval superstitious consciousness that is keeping people from their birthright of connection. And I see it everywhere, even with other mediums trying to say your loved one is stuck in some sort of purgatory, saying hauntings, spirits get stuck in a location, saying we're not connecting to past loved ones, we're connecting to demons. It's like that is a literal medieval consciousness. Can we all move forward by this point?
Yeah, I feel like there's a line being drawn in the sand right now, even within the spiritual community. And I'm seeing a pretty big split take place where there's those practitioners like you and myself and many other amazing people that I know who are understanding like, oh, there is an evolution taking place here, and I need to grow with this evolution and this understanding. And one thing I've been noticing is just coming back down. It's like the full circle. It's like going all the way up. Okay, great. Now you have this connection, this understanding, this bigger truth. And now we come back down and we learn how to be in this world without the fear, but with the trust, to learn, to grow, to expand. And then I see that other side of the fence where there's, like you just said, an even deeper perpetuation of fear, of dogmatic beliefs, of correct or incorrect. This is the way, this is not the way. You're either this or you're not. And, a lot of it's based in ego still. And I mean, absolutely no judgment to that at all, but you can see it. You can start to see the line splitting. And you said this at the start of the call. It's so interesting to me I remember around 2020, 2021, I started seeing all these advertisements for like spend $12, limited time, and become a Reiki master online. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? It took me years and years before I even began to start to charge for this or like make business. Not that that's, but you get what I'm saying. Like there's a line being drawn in the sand right now of authenticity, integrity, and evolution within spiritual consciousness. And then that old paradigm of just like right, wrong, good, bad, dogmatic, correct, incorrect.
Yes. And that's kind of leading me to what I was going to say next is like one big phase of our evolution of consciousness, which I so agree, is being able to not project our humanity or humanize the divine. And I think a next evolution of that is not applying energetic laws of physical reality onto the divine either. I feel like we try to like have these if then thinkings. Like even if we're not picturing the universe as a human, we're putting the universe's energetic signature through the same type of consciousness that humanity has. We think of it as judgmental or punishing us or even teaching us. There's something interesting about that that is also projecting our humanity on a felt energetic level. And it's hard to even really put words to this. This is something I've never spoken about out loud, just a feeling I've been having where it's like we try to control through understanding everything. And I think the next level of spiritual consciousness and evolution in that is realizing we can never know everything from these human bodies and not trying to overly like I see people who put content out and it's like you're one of these 7 types of souls or this is the exact path of this XYZ. It's like that to me is also very maybe like industrial revolution consciousness, like maybe not medieval anymore, but it's not modern. It's not where we're growing. It's still trying to define and limit and control and judge. And I think that's going to keep us from the truth. Again, truth is simple.
It really is. And that's that kind of the evolution where it's like the healing journey, the spiritual journey is not a correct or incorrect way. There's many, many ways to get there to discover, and you should discover that for yourself. And, you know, it's just really important to remember that it's get curious, not control. Like get curious about what's coming into your field of awareness, get curious about what's coming up, but don't give away your power and don't try to find control by knowing. That is the total opposite of empowerment. And one thing too that really has been so powerful to me, and something that this acacia tree, a different plant medicine I worked with, helped me understand, was like we're so powerful as human beings. And the thing is like when you get into channeling and when you get into all this stuff, I think for me, for sure, at first, I was like, wow, I was like mystified by being able to connect with all these beautiful energies and like be able to receive truth and information that is resonant and real. But then I started to recognize like, don't believe everything you hear. And there was this profound lesson where like one of the plants had kind of like messed with me a little bit with something. It's like, do this. And like, what do you think about that? And I was like, oh, like, why would you tell me that? You know, it's like, that doesn't ring true for me. And it was incredible because the message that came through was, why did I tell you that? And why did you do that? Because you let me. And the whole point behind it was like plant medicine, channeling, energy work, tapping in, meditation, whatever the modality is meant to awaken your power within you. It's meant to help you actually become the driver's seat and realize you're not giving your power away to these things. You're not saying almighty take over and you're the all-seeing knower. You're literally saying, I am powerful myself. This individual is powerful that I'm working with. And we are all just together going on a little journey up to a higher frequency to learn as a unit. I'm the tour guide here to help you understand, right? And so what is curious to me is like all of these things eventually are like, do you get it now? Like it's your power. Like it's not just yours as a practitioner, but also the person in front of you. Like you're receiving these gifts and these insights because of your power and your willingness. And that is important because it just kind of pulls away that idealism that you see.
Yeah, I think that's another sort of bullet point under the umbrella of spiritual consciousness evolving is like no longer believing our power as submissive to a higher power, but remembering that we're co creating with the divine inside of us. So I think that that's so powerful. I wanted to ask too, because I know a lot of people are going to be curious about this and really inspired by you. For people who are on their own journey of becoming a channel and wanting to open up in that way, what's a piece of advice or something you would tell to people who want to really dive deeper into their own development?
The first and most important thing that I tell everyone is to understand that it is a lifestyle, not a career. I mean, of course, it depends on what you want to do with it as well, but to channel, it's recognizing that your body does need to be in a certain state, like a certain vibrational state to receive things, I would say, like easily or effectively. And when I first started channeling, I mean, this gets a lot into why I say lifestyle, like healthy routines. What are you eating? What are you consuming? Not just literally, but what are you watching? What are you listening to? And so when you're first learning this stuff, it really does take a big commitment to lifestyle adjustments. For me, after years and years of doing it, I was able to find a better integration where it was like, okay, this connection's so strong that it's okay if I have a glass of wine here and there. Like, it's okay if I have some meat here and there. I was able to find more balance within my life. But at first, that stuff all went away. Like, it really became a pretty committed lifestyle. It's the first thing I would say. The second thing is you can't undo what you learn. So you have to understand that you are literally bringing new information and insights into your neurology, and you can't undo that. Like how the brain actually works, when you look at neural networks, you can never get rid of a neural network. You can just de energize it and intensify and strengthen or create new neural networks in the brain, right? And this matters because when I'm working with people, it's like those things are never going to go away. Like your bad habits, those tendencies, you're just minimizing the charge and the hold that they have on you. And you're intentionally enhancing the new habits and creating new neural networks and new strategy in the mind. But if you stop efforting towards that, those old neural pathways, oh, those can get energized really easily again. And so I say this because it's recognizing you're introducing a ton of new neurology, a ton of new neural networks into your brain. And you will shift, you will change, like how you experience life will be different. And so that's to me, it's a beautiful thing, but just to be aware of that before you go down the path is, I think, pretty important.
It's so true. I couldn't agree more. My mom used to call me a spiritual athlete because that's really what we are. Like, we have to be able to reliably show up every single day in this space. And that is a complete lifestyle. So, like you said, your goals, like that affects it. Like, if you want to be a professional in this space, it is a complete lifestyle. If you're wanting to develop your intuition and abilities, it's a lifestyle, but not in the same way as other people relying on you connecting. And it's so true about how you can't go back. Like, when you start to wake up and when you start to heal, everything in your life changes. Like, some relationships will no longer resonate with you, some living situations will no longer resonate with you. Like, everything will start to shift. But like you said, that's so exciting.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's bringing us to a higher authentic expression, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I think we're in a society with like instant gratification, and we think it has to happen immediately. We have to just one day be reborn, but it's a slow accumulation of steady habits and consistency and showing up time and time again, that just like we were talking about on the macro of spiritual evolution in terms of our consciousness, like moving away from only seeing God in a human form. It's the same with our own personal micro spiritual consciousness evolution. It takes looking back to who we were in 2015, 2016, 2017 to really see how far we've come now.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to witness and observe. And that kind of, to me, gets into it. I think everybody can agree with the fact that life is changing exponentially fast, like the fastest it ever has. And when I say life, I do mean consciousness, like our awareness, what we're exposed to, the influx of information. It's sometimes overstimulating and overwhelming. And one thing that came to me in meditation once in the channel was, as your guys' technology continues to advance, to maintain balance, which is the universe's objective, is to always find that balance spot, you're going to have to become more connected to nature's technology and your own technology. And that gets into the territory of like, we got to kind of remember who we are and how we interact with nature, and that we are nature, that we're not just existing on this planet. We are part of this planet. And that, I believe, is why we're seeing this influx of spiritual awakening. It's a natural evolutionary mechanism that's taking place right now, this remembrance, as the opportunity to get even further from nature is taking place. So too is the opportunity to get closer to it than ever. And, that's really what I'm seeing and witnessing.
That's so powerful. And what I was seeing as you were talking was don't lose yourself in a toxic relationship. Like it's kind of the macro sense of that. Like when you get into a relationship with someone who is shiny and exciting, and you just leave behind all of your authentic codes and move into their energy. And it's like, no, humanity, don't do that. Remember the essence of who you really are. Don't get swept up in the shiny promise that technology and progress is presenting. It's not going to serve us if we lose our authentic essence in the process. But if we can keep our authentic essence and values and all of that, then it can enhance and build. And I think that's that sweet spot that you were talking about.
That's the balance. Dr. Bruce Lipton, there's a docuseries, The Grand Convergence. Everyone in the world should watch it. And he talks about extinction curves, basically. And he is like, it's a yo-yo pattern. He's like, we go into what we call scientific materialism, no belief systems, too stuck in the matrix, too disconnected. And then we go all the way up to this bell curve of massive spiritual awakening, but to a level that's like a little too much, like we're too not grounded in reality. And he was like, and then there's that moment in history where we hit those sweet spots where there's this perfect harmony between both. And then we start the yo-yo pattern. And he was like, we have to stop the yo-yo pattern and find that balance between science and God and recognize that they're the same. Like spirituality, nature, technology being this beautiful gift that's being handed to us, but how can we use it to expand us, not give over to it? And we're definitely in that era right now. We're in the tech evolution, or tech revolution, if you will. And it's kind of crazy, but I see it. And, nature wants us to succeed. We're part of it. We're a creation of it. And I feel like these beautiful energies that are coming in the channel, angelic energy or whatever it might be, they also want us to succeed. They're like, we want you to get this. That's really what I'm sensing.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I love that. And I couldn't agree more that science and magic are two sides of the same coin. And all of this talk of evolution and benevolent forces that want us to succeed, it all feels very hopeful. And just on the micro scale, sometimes like the most difficult, challenging times of our life are where we ascend in consciousness the most. And I think that's happening on a collective level right now.
Totally agree. Very beautiful.
Yeah. I could seriously talk to you all day, Annelise, and luckily we're friends, so I can later off of the podcast. So, where can our hummingbird community find you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so my website, AnneliseMindset.com. That's where you can read more about my work. There's also my booking link, and you can reach me there. I also have a workbook coming out that you also can find on that website to just kind of get a little dabble into the work I offer with beautiful meditations connected to it. And then, of course, my socials is Annelise Cherie, and the spelling will be on this episode, I'm sure, so you guys can find that. But those are the two best places to connect with me. And I'm excited to see who I get to support after this, just because every podcast I've ever done has connected me to such amazing people. And so I'm excited to see who feels called.
Yes, absolutely. Me too. I'm excited to see that. And we will link everything in the show notes as well. So, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time today. It was such a pleasure having you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast, and it's such an honor.
Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my loves, the part of the podcast where I sit with our angels, our guides, our loved ones in the spirit world, and give the messages for the collective. As always, I feel like it goes without saying at this point, but I'll still say it. Take what resonates with you, leave the rest. And if you know somebody who could benefit from the message, please send it their way. So I got this really beautiful message the other day about the nature of death and rebirth and transformation. And I wanted to share it before I get into the angel messages that came through for the week because it felt really pressing to share. And so a lot of times in the spiritual spaces, we talk about up levels and death and rebirth and new versions of self. And I think there's a connotation that's sort of sneaky within that makes it feel like we wake up one day or an astrological transit happens or a catalyst drops into place that all of a sudden in a moment we are changed. And while I think that there can be some truth to that in some circumstances, with everything, there's not one size fits all. I think that this is a little bit of a misnomer. This idea that this astrological transit or catalyst happens and all of a sudden we're up leveled and we're a new version of self isn't quite accurate. And I was thinking about how messages that I share or other people in the spiritual space share might be misinterpreted in that way. To rewind a little bit, if you listen to Sitting with Spirit for episode 219, I was talking about my period pain journey and how sometimes overcoming our worst fears is one of the fastest ways that we can up level and that the universe can show us how powerful we are. And so I was thinking more about that. And, we wake up one day and we're like, wow, this old trigger doesn't have power over me anymore. Or I'm no longer attracted to this person that abuses me. I'm not going to co-create with that anymore. And that's what we would call this new version of self. It's sort of akin to this idea of overnight success. We see people online and publicly who are killing it in their careers or really accomplished in some way, and we just think they're an overnight success. But I think we're applying that same kind of timeline pressure to ourselves with our healing journey. And it's like, okay, I'm ready to quantum leap. I'm ready to jump into another timeline. But I think that that language discounts the reality, which is change and transformation and death and rebirth is actually really slow. And Pluto, the planet that rules the Phoenix, the death and rebirth process, is the slowest moving planet. It's the farthest from the sun. It takes the longest to orbit. And so this message that I got, and it brings me back to this quote that my acting teacher told me back in the day. He said, our habits and daily choices are who we become. And that to me is what I'm talking about when I talk about the up level, the next level version of self. We might hear that language and think, oh, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be powerful and I'm going to be successful and I'm going to be like in my goddess era energy. When in reality, it's that maybe even 1% more of that has been unlocked. And then the next week, 5% more of that has been unlocked. And then the next week, we make 1 to 3 choices that are slightly more empowered than we previously would have. And that leads to another percent being unlocked until these slow, gradual changes lead to a moment when we are realizing I am not who I used to be. I have up leveled. So I just wanted to share that because we think about things like taking it to my period journey. I'm like, I can't wait to be the version of self who is no longer afraid of cramps and debilitating pain and sometimes having to pause my life for those things. But I'm not just going to wake up one day and be that version of self. It's like, when I choose to maybe research more holistic pathways, that's activating a percentage of the transformation. When I really sit with my inner child's fear and trauma around the level of pain that I have been in chronically since puberty, that's a percentage. That's what my guides really wanted me to get and also to share, is this feeling of like, it's not just going to be even a week-long thing where it's like, oh, I've been in the chrysalis and now I'm out. It's a constant, steady chipping away, sort of like how when somebody grows in height, you can't really notice if you're with them on the day-to-day, but then you're like, oh, wow, you've actually really gotten tall after a significant amount adds up. We talk about the old dying away, and I know that I use that language, especially when I'm talking about Pluto transits and things in astrology. And I think that we can assume that means the entirety of the old dying away, when in reality, it's fractions of the old dying away that eventually add up to the whole. So I think that that shift in perspective can be really encouraging, because sometimes on our paths, we're like, am I even making progress? Am I moving forward? But each fraction of a percentage is adding up to the old dying away each time we choose that. So really powerful. And the small changes, the small tweaks, the small improvements, that is how it can be sustainable. It's kind of like people on a weight loss journey. They can sometimes lose a bunch of weight, but then they start to yo-yo diet because they're not doing it in a way that's healthy and sustainable, mind, body, or soul. And so for the old to die away and truly stay away, these small, sustainable habits, decisions, mindsets, patterns, all of these things increasing by even the smallest amount make the biggest difference. So getting to the angel messages for the week, I got this really beautiful message. So the first message that I got was seeing our brain, and I got this like really exciting feeling of potential and possibility and expansion. And it feels like one of the biggest messages for this week, or whenever you're finding this episode, is to stop playing by the rules that aren't even true anymore. And this feels like it's on a societal level, an ancestral healing level, and a deeply inherited level. I feel like so many of us have these subconscious rules we live by. Like, if I don't work hard for it, it's really not worth something. Or I have to be perfect to be loved. And I feel like these rules that are very subconscious have been keeping us in these boxes, because as soon as we try to break them, or break free of them, or write a different story, these emotional messengers of shame and self-doubt start to come up. We are like, could it really be that easy? Could I really take up that much space? Could I not be a people pleaser? Could I actually just drop everything and move to another place? The answer is yes. And so I think that there's this feeling coming through of really examining the rule book that we have been given on many levels and inherited, and really ask, are the rules that I'm playing by actually true? Or are they just things that have been inherited that I am ready to break free of? And I felt just the most joyful sense of breaking free and what that could mean for our life, for our contentment, for our authentic expression. It felt so beautiful and so exciting. And I just kept hearing free yourself. And it felt like there's this rebellious streak that really was here to question everything. And if those emotional messengers of shame and self-doubt come up, that's very valuable information. It doesn't mean that it's the truth, that you should be ashamed, that you should doubt yourself. But where have you witnessed that pattern before? Who makes you feel ashamed? Where have you witnessed that, like in your childhood, or the adults around you in your childhood? What's the earliest memory you can remember feeling that similar type of emotion? Just start to get curious about that, because it means there's information there. And I always say, and I know I've said this on the podcast, that self-doubt is actually a good thing, because it means you're on the precipice of breaking out of a comfort zone. And that's what this feels like. Like, we're reassessing our foundations, our pathways. Even home and family and living situation feels like a big part of this. Like, what's possible, what's potential for some of you guys. And so I feel like we're freeing ourselves, and we're deciding, is the story I'm telling myself about what's possible really in alignment with what my heart asks for, what's authentic to me, and what would be my most joyful life? And I feel like there's this sense of us sometimes getting glimmers of what that choice, move, life story, lifestyle would look like. And then our head immediately blocks us from even moving forward or thinking too much into that because of those outdated rules and playbooks that we're still living by. And we're just asked to throw the rule book out the window. Like every single thing, run it through the barometer of your own heart to see, is this even true? Or is this something I inherited that is trying to keep me small and stuck and paralyzed to stay safe? I also wanted to say there was an element of the self-doubt and the shame that would have worked on our ancestors, but will not work on us. And that also feels important to share. That what would have stopped our ancestors in their tracks, the fear of being judged or not accepted or people criticizing you, those things might have stopped previous generations of ancestors, but we are stronger than that now. We can hold space for the shame, for the self-doubt, for the guilt, and not cave to them in ways that previous generations would have. And in that way, we are cycle breaking on an even deeper level. And I do not know who in the hummingbird community needed to hear that, but I was feeling just all of the feels when I was getting this message, and I felt so excited. And so for all of us, let's break free of any of the chains of inherited stories that are trying to keep us playing by a rule book that was written a really long time ago that does not apply to us or the current world we're living in. And let's start to look more authentically and with a lens of innovation of like, how joyful could I get if I could rewrite the rule book? What would it look like? And how can I live more in accordance with that? And if there's resistance to that, and if it doesn't even feel safe to think about that, then sit with that resistance, sit with the discomfort coming up, because there might be some really valuable things to learn about yourself through that. It was really interesting too, because there was a message that came through about archaeology and more ancient wisdom remembered and mysteries being revealed. So it will be interesting to see if anything's in the news around the time this episode comes out, because I was seeing like the Easter Island, I think that's what it's called, like the Moai statues. I don't remember the name, but they're those heads. And then they realize like, oh, there's bodies under the ground. And I was seeing those and I just got this feeling like more stuff being dug up or more mysteries being revealed. And I was seeing like star maps and constellations. And I got this feeling of like the stars were ancient technology in some ways. I couldn't exactly understand what they were saying, but I just felt like there was a connection to like the stars, the cycles, the time, and something about archaeological finds or more coming to the surface and us actually needing to remember ancient things. So that will be interesting to see how it pans out. I want to go into the mediumship. So for this mediumship connection, it felt really heavy to me. And I was about to give a trigger warning, but I don't think it necessarily needs a trigger warning. I think it's my own personal experience of bringing this spirit person through that felt such deep grief around this passing for the people that are still here for him. So I'm almost like giving myself a trigger warning, like take a deep breath before you talk about this because it's intense. I felt a younger male in the spirit world, and I wanted to place him around like 19, 20, somewhere late teens, early 20s, around there. And I felt like there was something to do with being paralyzed, being in a coma. In particular, I felt like I hit the back of my head on the right side, and I felt like my whole right side of my body was really locked up. Especially interestingly, I felt this knot in my throat. Like my throat felt very swollen and I felt like I couldn't talk, I couldn't move, almost like I was in this coma-like state fighting for my life was the feeling that I got. I did feel like there was a car accident and I did feel like there would have been drugs related. And I also saw this young man in spirit with his dad's mom in the spirit world. I heard the name Cody, so it could have either been a C name, or if this is for a few of you, there might be somebody connected to him that's close to him named Cody. I felt like this person in the spirit world, the best way to describe him while he was here was very troubled. That's part of the depth of what I was feeling, was this sense of depression and angst and just feeling very troubled is the best way I could say it. And so as I was connecting with him, part of the like depth of this grief was with his connection with his mom, because I feel like there's something here with his mom who feels like she would blame herself for his passing. And I also feel like their relationship would have been difficult even before his passing, because it just feels like there was this sense of like almost constant grief that she was in within her relationship with her son, like with drug use, with his troubles with mental health. It just always felt like this mom didn't know how to reach her son or help her son. And it just feels like the depth of grief in that relationship from mother to son was so deep. And it was part of what was just like flooring me as I was tapping into it. And there was a really interesting message here. I got this feeling, especially when this person in the spirit world was in a coma. I saw his mom on the side of his bed pleading for him to like give her a miracle and come back to her, is like what I saw. And I got this feeling that for him, there's this message here of like, I did hold on for as long as I could, but there's a deeper message that I feel other spirit people tacking onto is like, do not take our exit from the physical world as a sign that we did not love you or that we did not fight for your love. Sometimes there are forces greater than our connections and relationships, as tough as that is and as difficult as it is. And just chiming in my own personal experience, I really had to learn that my mom's death was not about me. Sometimes souls come in and they have experiences and they learn lessons, and some of it has to do with our interactions with them and what our soul wants to learn with them and co-create with them, but some of it just has nothing to do with us. And I just got this message for anybody out there who feels, I know in the earlier stages of grief, there can be so much anger. And I have been there. And it's kind of like bringing it back to my own experience again. Like, Mom, if you really loved me, how could you leave me? How could you not fight harder? And I think for those of us in that state, it can really feel, and I feel so much grief around this, it can really feel like if you loved me, then you would have stayed. And you know, if you've taken my love life workshop, that if then thinking is something I talk about a lot in there because it's fully based on projection, not truth. There's so many other things at play. And so he is saying the spirit person's like big message is really for his mom and for anybody that can relate to this dynamic is, I loved you so much. I loved you as much as I was capable of. And I did fight as much as I was capable of. And just because I passed didn't mean that I don't love you or that you didn't do enough. None of those things. And I feel like there's this sense too of his mom being still really stuck in her grief and blaming herself, and that he doesn't want that. I've talked about this before too, that there's an abundance of love in the spiritual world. Like in the spirit world, we don't have to be in scarcity and try to be in this place of like guilt. Like, if I really loved them, then I wouldn't ever be happy again because they're gone. That's another really common thing. And I went through it myself with grief. But there again is that pesky if then thinking that truly is the root of so much of our suffering, and kind of goes back to that original message of let go of the rule book. Like, where are those if then statements holding you back in your life? If this, then that. Because 99% of the time, if then statements are not as black and white as they seem. I also wanted to say this spirit person showed me that there was a baby that was recently born in the family. I feel like there would have been a sister or a female cousin that just had a baby. And he just gives me this feeling of like, I can actually be back to myself and support my mom and my family in the spirit world. Life was too painful and too much of a struggle for me. And I did get the feeling that he wanted his mom to know that he heard her when he was in his coma. And there's something about him like staying alive longer than they thought was possible in that state, and that was his way to show he was trying to fight for her. So there's just a really deep grief with the mediumship this week. It's like I can't just tie it into a neat bow at the end with like a feel-good message, other than that same message that they really wanted to share of sometimes, and again, I really had to learn this lesson myself, sometimes the way people pass and the way people live have nothing to do with us. It doesn't mean that they don't care. It doesn't mean that they didn't want to still be with you on a deep level. So That's the message this week. And I know it's a deep one and it's a heavy one, and it doesn't make it a whole lot easier for those of us that are still earthside going through deep grief journeys. But with this spirit in particular, he was showing me being very involved with his family. And I also feel like there was a really karmic nature to his relationship with his mom. And I feel like there was a sense of his mom feeling like she lost him a long time before he passed physically. And something about him being in the spirit world is bringing him back to an awareness that he can find his way back to her, and she can find his way back to him in a way that wasn't possible when he was here. So the relationship continues on after physical death. I know I talk about that a lot. And since I'm feeling so much grief around this, if there are people that are really in deep states of grief, I really recommend episode 201 of Magic Hour podcast and episode 104 of Magic Hour podcast, as well as my Arthur Findlay College series. That is a 4-part series. Those are the episodes that I get into a lot of stuff about grief and grieving and the spirit world and my mediumship development journey. So sometimes the way people pass has nothing to do with us, and that can be such a difficult thing to recognize and really feel as truth when we're in our deep grief journey. But I'm sending so much love to you guys. I think it's really fascinating that the if-then statements came up, especially because I wasn't planning on talking about them, and they really feel like they're in alignment with letting go of outdated rule books and subconscious patterns that are holding us back. And I think if then thinking is one of the biggest ones. So, if people cared about me, then they would show up this way. If I was lovable, then I would get XYZ. So just really examine where that thought pattern is coming up and ask yourself, like, is this actually really true? Or is this a sneaky way that my ego is trying to get my needs met that is holding me back? And the key word for the week is freedom. Freedom, freedom, freedom. How can you be more free? How can you free yourself to an even deeper level? Have a beautiful week, my loves, and we'll see you next time.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we'll send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. If you review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we'll add your name twice. And if you share the podcast on your Instagram story and tag us, we'll add your name a 3rd time. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 222 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are magic.